Salutare tuturor și v-am găsit la un nou videoclip pe canal. Facem un nou videoclip și de ultimul videoclip 2024 din că mâine la miez de noapte se va face 2025 și nu-mi place, dar aia e. Nu uitați să apăsați de like, subscribe, cred că mai am zis 200 de ori asta. Hai să începem. Să dăm un pic mai încet să mă aud. Poate subtitări. Ce găsesc mai engleză, mă rog. Am zis să reacționăm și la ceva cu mașini. Știu. Știu. N-am reacționat niciodată. Cred.
Suspension bridge.
Da, mă rog.
Two archways for each side and started attempting to tension it using string. But after many tries and lackluster results, I decided it would be best to move the supports into the water, which won't look as cool, but will be much easier. It still wasn't exactly easy getting the string taut for each part of the bridge, but it was definitely more successful. Wow, I just cut like an hour of footage into like 10 seconds. My fingers were pruny by the end of it, and it still sags a bit, and I forgot to put all the tiles on, but I'm afraid if I do, the bridge will break. But we're using a G-Wagon, so I'm sure it can handle the rough road. Yeah, this thing is impossible to steer as it does not have a return to center steering system. But wow, the bridge actually worked. Completing the first method of crossing a river. By the way, it's almost 2025 and I'm basically exactly at 500k subs. It's my goal to double that by the end of 2025 and hit 1 million. I think you get what I'm saying. Another unique way of crossing a river is a barge float pulled by a rope, otherwise known as a cable ferry. First things first, I need a pulley system above the road on each end that can pull the ferry back and forth. I first tried using pulleys and spools where one is winding and the other is unwinding, which I thought would work for sure, but when I tried it, it turns out that one unspools a lot quicker than the other. This is because even though they are rotating at the same speed, one has lots of loops, which means there's more length to each loop as it unwinds. I wasn't sure how to fix this at first, but then I realized I could just use a single wheel on one end, which worked. Even when I added the barge, which barely supports the weight of the G-Wagon without sinking, but it should be, it was not enough. I tried over and over and over. But every attempt ended in some variation of the same few problems. I tried stabilizing the beams holding the rope to the barge by adding strings. I even added the third boat hill, which still didn't really help. Eventually, I even got the barge to cross the river with the car on top, but dismounting never worked. Thankfully, the G-Wagon never got stuck, but eventually I gave up on the small boat holes and switched briefly to using these big Lego tires, which almost worked better before trying my luck with this large boat hole, which only required a bit of changing to design in order to make it function. Okay, awesome. The way that lines up is perfect with the G-Wagon going straight on and on.
A reușit. Chiar a reușit.
But what if we want to cross the river using something that doesn't have to connect both sides physically, like the bridge or the barge? Another common way to cross the river or a body of water is a ferry, a boat designed to carry cars. So I'm going to try and make one using these two bolt holes as the base. First, we need a booth where passengers can buy tickets to cross the river, so I made this little stand where you can print them out. Then for the boat, I'll first build a 1-lane wide platform the whole length of the boat with supports underneath to hold it up so it can overhang the whole of the boat. Ferries usually have a folding platform that connects the boat to the land so the cars can drive on and off. So I'll tackle that mechanism first. Okay, let's put it in the water and test what we have so far. Nice, it floats. I'll add these small motors to each gate, and now we can focus on making the boat actually move. I was going to use this hole in the bottom to add the motors, but it makes more sense to have them at one end so it can just push and pull the boat. So I built a Technic assembly that can hold the propellers at an angle in the water.
Okay. Tare se face vreodată asta.
I tried it first with these smaller propellers and it sort of worked, but they
Dacă
slid really
sunteți
loosely
curioși
on this pin, which means
cum arată avioanele și n-ați văzut, o să aveți o poză pe extern. Acum mi-a venit în cap. Hai, editore, acum să apară.
I also tested the on and off driving platforms and okay, so I'm gonna have to
tot
change this.
editezi și
When I try and control that,
No.
it's way
fac asta.
too fast.
Bam.
Yeah, that's simply not going to work. But thankfully, I own these two worm gear housings that always seem to come in handy. So I attached them to the slide using a gear chain, which was not the move. So I moved the motors down, which removed any need for extra gears, and now it moves at the perfect speed. It wouldn't be complete though without some design details, so I kept it simple by adding this bright orange stripe along the sides, these slopes at the end, and some white pillars at the bottom which look like supports. Okay, but that was all said and not done. And so now comes the much trickier part of the equation, testing to see if it actually works.
Ușor. Așa. Și acum urcă mașina. Sper să meargă. Merge, bun! Acum închidem. Acum mergem. Uite, cred că merge. Ce aluni, așa. Uite, cred că merge. A mers. Fai de cap meu.
Before I build the most challenging and complicated way to cross a river, I want to build a bonus method that doesn't use the G-Wagon, the boat car, which was actually suggested by some of you guys. I already tried using these massive tires on the cable ferry. They will definitely be more useful here, as will this small boat hull. First, I'll build in a rear-wheel drive system to power the back tires and test the boat. Yeah, so not adding ramps was probably not the move, but even though the electronics got wet, they still seem to be doing fine, so I'll just roll with it. The second time was a little less wet, but not adding a way to steer was definitely an undersight on my part. Not that that mattered though, because even if I guided the boat towards the ramp to exit the water, it didn't have enough power to push itself out, which makes total sense. This was supposed to be a quick bonus round, but now that I've started, I can't let it get the best, which means adding a four-wheel drive for the boat, as well as a rudder, which will hopefully steer it in the water. Just don't ask God changes directions on land. I also made many attempts with different ramps out of the water, like a two-step design, which didn't help, and no ramp at all, which obviously didn't render any better results, which means if the four-wheel drive with a rudder setup doesn't work, I'm not sure what to do. Okay, well, the steering is completely useless, I'm assuming because there's no propeller pushing water directly into the rudder, and the whole assembly basically exploded when shifting from the water to the land, so I think I might need to do a few more upgrades. Firstly, four-wheel drive is great, but to get the ability to steer in the water and on land as well, I'm gonna shift to front-wheel drive with two separate motors, each responsible for driving one wheel, which will work much better to steer in the water, which also means I can come up ramps from an angle, hopefully increasing the grip the tires have. So let's see. Yeah, it's still not making the climb. Maybe if I extend the ramp on one side.
Acolo nu vrea să merg. Serios că fi de aici. Hârtiile. De asta că stau aici pe birou, stau la birou.
Nope, still couldn't make it over. But it's time to move on to the next method of crossing a river, so if this video manages to get 50k likes, I'll revisit the boat car and make it even better. Oh, and you remember Ryan from this video? He really wants me to build a boat car. These don't really exist in real life, but I'm gonna try and make a car gondola. This is gonna be difficult. Well, we'll need a center. Video manages to get 50k likes, I'll revisit the boat car and make it even need a center support at the top, which will hold the motors and the drive wheels, and then supports on each side, which will take, but it's going to need to all be very strong. So on each end, I built in a Technic beam to the frame, which will be strong. In the center, I'm going to need 4 tall pillars, so I connected these arc plates in an I shape and built 4 bases with brick bricks. To make sure there's structural integrity, I used a stack of round bricks in the center, which have axle holes, so that I can connect these scaffolding pillars not only to the studs, but also to an axle down in the center. I stacked them up pretty tall, and then built a frame around the top, which will hold the pulley system and motors to power the cords. I first tried using 2 motors connected to a tire on each side, hanging down from the top beam, but it obviously bent a ton, so I built in a second beam a bit lower that I connected with Technic beams, which makes it a lot more structurally sound. I also tried using a single motor with a worm gear housing and universal joints to connect the motor up to both wheels, but it was way too janky. Plus, even if it had worked well, I doubt there would have been enough torque to drive both wheels just off one motor, especially while the G-Wagon was on the platform. I then realized the builds I used to control the gates in the ferry would work perfectly here as well. A worm gear for both, and all compact enough to fit along the Technic beam. Unfortunately, the system is using 2 motors, which will likely run not exactly in sync, but it should be fine. I did realize, however, that because I added a second layer of snot bricks here, the axles running through the connections of these beams are impeded, meaning the top part solely relies on the clutch power of Lego studs. So I tied more string around the base of these supports and connected it to all 4 corners of the towers, making sure that the string wrapped down and around the connection point of the 2 top pillars before locking it in. This way I can be sure that it has the strength required to lift the G-Wagon and the platform.
Ja, testa.
But it's gone way too smoothly so far for something so large and structural, so naturally I had a massive problem. When testing, I realized the weight of the platform causes the rope to slip on the tires even though they are grippy rubber. And nothing I did, like raising the endpoints or building more supports to help increase the tension and take some of the load off these Technic beams, worked, which left me with one option. Okay, so the rope is a no-go, and I really don't think I have enough, but I'm gonna try and find all the chain I possibly can and switch to using gears and chain link. And somehow I actually managed to find enough. Not all the same color, but it gets the job done. And thankfully, after switching all the wheels for gears, it actually works. It even managed to climb to the very top and over the gear. Like I feared though, one motor is slightly faster than the other, or it could be a difference in the amount of chains, but I'm not gonna count, so it'll just have to do. Okay, but in order for this to be considered working, it still needs to support the weight of the G-Wagon. So I tested it with a very cautious hand, waiting underneath just in case it snapped or fell, which happened right at the very top. But I fixed the spacing problem and got it over successfully, which leaves just one final problem: loading and unloading the car onto the platform. I settled for a platform underneath that can hold it up while the car gets on, and is also smooth enough that the platform can slide across it once the car is on. Okay, and after all that work, let's see if it actually ferries the car across the river.
Bun. 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 Mai vedem însă și cred că gata. Dacă vreți să uitați la videoclipul acesta, se numește Crossing a Rive Asing Lego. Și cam atât a fost videoclipul. Chiar a mers. Și chiar atât a fost videoclipul. Dacă v-a plăcut, apăsați 90 de like, subscribe. Și ne vedem data viitoare. Pa, pa!